Well, Happy New Year. This is not the way that I imagined that I was going to lead in a new year of the Candid Frame in 2025. But life is kind of strange. As some of you may or may not know, on January 8th, there was a wildfire in Los Angeles, specifically Altadena, California, where I live with my wife and dog and sister-in-law. And the wildfire came through our entire community and leveled it, including my home, my studio, and there is nothing left. Everything is gone. Well, everything in terms of material stuff is gone. I guess I'll start with just telling the story of what happened. There's so much in my head right now that sometimes it's really hard to process everything. It seems like there are multiple tracks running simultaneously, so it's easy to go off on some tangent, but I am going to try and keep it as simple and understandable as possible. Around 6 o'clock that day, the power went out, which is not unusual during windstorm season in Altadena. It's happened in the past. So when the power went out, we weren't shocked. We weren't surprised. We were expecting it because it usually happens. And depending on how bad the windstorm is, sometimes we're out of power for several hours. The worst that it ever was 3 days. Over the years, it's gotten a little better. And at 6 o'clock, I was working on something downstairs in the office. Power went out. And I just grabbed my iPad that it was fully charged, went upstairs, and my wife and I just got into bed and just said, well, we're just going to read and relax and then just go to bed early. And usually I go to bed around 9:30. So I was reading on my iPad, no power, no lights, no gas, nothing, we were just trying to tire ourselves out just to go to sleep. And right before I went to bed, I looked at my phone and I saw something mentioning a fire in Altadena. So I thought, what? And I went to my bedroom window and looked out, the window faces north, and up in the distance high on the hill, I saw these flames. And then I saw my next door neighbor pulling out his car into the driveway. I grabbed a jacket and went out to my deck to feel the direction in which the wind was coming, because the wind had been fierce. It was like 50, 60, 70 mile-an-hour winds. And when I felt that the wind was coming from the direction of the fire, I knew we were in trouble. And I went out to my neighbor and he said, he's leaving. And I took my cue from him. And I went into the house and I told my wife and my sister-in-law, let's pack, we got to go. And at first they didn't know what the hell I was talking about because they were both half asleep and they didn't really comprehend what was happening. And because there was no light, we were using the light from our phones to run around the house trying to figure out what do we need to take. And we didn't take much. I went directly to the studio and grabbed the hard drive, which contained my digital archive of photographs, because I always knew if anything ever happened, grab that. And then I grabbed my earthquake emergency kit, because I thought that's something good to have. But everything else in the studio, I left. I didn't go into the safe to pull out all my camera equipment. I didn't even take the power cord for the hard drive. Part of me was saying, I just don't have time. And then went to the house and we got my sister-in-law's remains, the remains of our 3 dogs, the cremations. My wife grabbed some pictures and a big bag of dog food. And the electronics, the phones, 2 laptops, and we got in the car and we left. And I think all of us felt like, okay, we're going to come back and it will be here. Because in the past, there have been fires up in the Altadena Mountains, but they have never, ever gone as far south as they did this year. And it was because of those unprecedented winds, those 70, 80, 100 mile an hour winds that whipped those flames and embers all the way downhill. We scrambled. We were in the car. We were at 5% power on both of our phones. We went to the convention center, which was the evacuation center, just to get our bearings and to charge our phones and to find a place. And luckily, we found a hotel just around the corner that was dog friendly. So my wife, my sister-in-law, and our 2 dogs found a small room with queen beds, and we hunkered down there for the night and watched the news, trying to understand what the hell was happening. And the next morning around 7 o'clock, I started processing and thinking about the stuff that I left behind. And I hadn't heard an evacuation order yet for that zone, that area in which my house was in. So I was hoping against hope that I could drive up there and get there in time, just in case, and get some of the things I'd forgotten. Well, halfway up the hill, I get a notification from my wife. She's calling and she's saying, "Oh, I'm getting a notification on our app that someone's broken the sliding glass doors. We have looters. Be careful." And I'm processing, oh my God, what am I going to do if there's somebody in the house? And at that time, we also get the notification of the alert to evacuate. And I get about a mile away from my house to a street called Woodbury, which is a main thoroughfare just south of where my house is. And then on either side are buildings and homes that are up in flames. And I'm driving up this place and I'm just looking at these things that are just so familiar to me, and now they're just being destroyed. And I'm about 6 blocks from where my house is, and I hit this wall of thick, dense smoke. And if you've ever seen the movie The Fog, it's directed by Frank Darabont, based on a Stephen King story, I think. And there's a scene at the end where they're driving through this fog and they're surrounded by it and they can't see anything. I was in that scene from that movie because I couldn't see past the hood of the car. And at that moment, I realized that even if I got in front of my house, I wouldn't be able to see the curb, much less the front door. And at that point, I turned around and slowly drove the car through all that smoke. And it seemed to last forever until finally I started seeing the road and I made my way down. Later on in the afternoon, we drove back up there because the fire had done its business there, and there were no police or National Guard up there, so we were able to get up to our house. And even before we arrived at the house, it was just decimation everywhere. It was just unbelievable. The day before, all these stores and houses and markets had been standing and life had been normal, and now it was just all laid waste. When we got to our house and we saw that it was all gone, it's hard to describe what I felt, but it was like, part of me kind of knew it was gone, but then to see it was like, yep, it's gone. And I thought I would break down completely when I saw it, but surprisingly, I didn't. I can't say the same for my wife. It was really hard for her. Still is. But there was nothing there. I took some photographs and I posted one on my Instagram. And when I post this episode, I'll probably post more of the images there, including a video that I did of our horseshoe, of all the different houses in my immediate neighborhood. So you can see how devastating it was. And then we slowly made our way back to the hotel. And then since then, we've been trying to figure it all out. Talking with insurance company, talking with FEMA, looking and reading up on all the different resources there are out there to try and recover. And man, you just don't know how you're going to deal with something like that until it happens to you. You've seen it on television countless times. It's another thing when it's your life, it's your home, it's your family. I'm in a hotel room near downtown Pasadena that is filled with people who have lost everything, Or if they haven't lost everything, their homes are still there, but they can't get back to them until they have been cleared and declared relatively safe enough to go back. And at the convention center, there are people there sleeping on cots who don't have the resources to be able to stay in a hotel. And they're there with their families, with their dogs. They're older people who have been, maybe at convalescent centers or maybe even living at home, and they're there in their hospital beds with their caregivers right next to them. As much as I have lost, I am so grateful that I am where I am right now, not just because I'm safe, not just because I have a roof over my head, but because I am surrounded by people who know what it is to have lost so much. Conversations are really easy to start in the lobby, in the restaurant, anywhere. And you say hello, and you check in, and you say, how you doing? There's no awkwardness. There's no tentativeness. There's no fumbling. There's no, awkwardness about, small talking. Everybody knows why they're there. And everybody knows somebody has lost something, or at worst, someone. There's a degree of sympathy and empathy there that is just incredibly remarkable. And it's special, and it helps. It helps ease the pain of such an immense loss, to be surrounded by people who completely understand, where you don't have to explain anything. They just look at you, and you look at them, and you guys know. You just know. That's a powerful, powerful thing. I'm still processing everything that's happened. We're living out of a suitcase right now. We left with the clothes on our back, and in a couple of days we went out and bought some clothes, and it's all in a suitcase. We have our dog. We got a crate donated by the people who we adopted our dog from just a month ago. We have our laptops, we have our phones, but, our whole lives went from 1,600 something square house into a 500 square foot hotel room. And that's our life right now. But I'm really grateful, and I know that is strange to say and maybe unimaginable to many of you. But I was talking to someone a couple of days afterwards, and I realized something that just sent chills through me. You see, as I said before, I went to bed, and I was going to bed around 9:30. And our phones were down to about 5% power because as we were driving down the hill, we were going back and forth, putting the charger from our car into the phone so that my wife could call people to try and secure a hotel room, and me trying to do the same. And I realized that if my wife and my sister-in-law were already in bed and I had simply gone to sleep and had not looked at that phone and seen that notification about a fire, I just would have gone to sleep. And our phones by morning, they would have been completely dead. They were at 5% power at 10 o'clock at night, and we didn't have any power. There was nothing to charge those phones. And I normally get up at around 5:30 without the alarm clock turning on. And according to the alarm on our security app, the house is on fire at 6:15. We were one of the last families to leave that street because the majority of people were aware of the fire by the time it started around 6 or 7. I didn't realize there was a fire until after 10 o'clock. And so right before I was about to drive away, I knocked at the door of several of our neighbors just in case some of them were like me, were asleep, thinking that in the morning they'd get power back. And I knocked on 2 or 3 different doors and nobody answered. And then I realized, oh, we're the last ones to leave. And if I hadn't gotten that text, if I hadn't looked out that window and saw the fire up there on that hill, I would have just gone to bed. Me, my wife, and my sister, 2 dogs in our house, might not have woken up. Or even if we had, if we had smelled smoke, we would have been scrambling to a degree that was far worse than what happened at 10 o'clock at night when we were out of the house in 20 minutes. At that point, the streets would have been filled with, smoke and falling embers, and it would have been a truly horrific, terrifying experience. So, suffice it to say, I am incredibly thankful that we got out when we did. Though we've lost, all these things, we're not really focused on the stuff we lost. It happens in moments. There are moments where I realize some of the things that I've lost in the fire, and it hurts and it stings. And I know that that's going to be happening for weeks or months, if not years. But right now, my wife and I are just sort of hunkering down, trying to process this thing and do all the things that we need to do to recover, including, in the same boat with tens of thousands of people, all of us, thousands of us, who are trying to simultaneously rebuild our lives in some form. And it's a mad show. It's just crazy. And, trying to figure out what to do next is really difficult. There are so many resources out there that we're tapping into, FEMA, insurance, different organizations, including the people who are employers that are providing resources to help us. That's wonderful, but there's so much that we're having to come to grips with, to understand. And one of the realities, unfortunately, is the realization is because of how huge this event is, we're underinsured. If it had just been our house under normal circumstances, our insurance probably would have been sufficient to, take care of us in terms of temporary housing, rebuilding the house, and all that. But now you have tens of thousands of houses, not just in Altadena, but in Pacific Palisades and elsewhere. And everyone is going to be competing for the same resources. And there are going to be endless delays because of labor shortages and material shortages, and rebuilding may take 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. Based on the money that we had the day of the fire, we don't have enough. But, we're making an effort to try and make the difference. My wife has got a GoFundMe page that she's doing, and, we're doing a variety of different things in terms of, helping to sort of bridge that gap. And I don't know what that's going to end up looking like. I don't know. There's so much I don't know. We're making an effort, but right now what we're focused on is kind of the short term. That's long-term stuff. Right now, we're short-term. Right now, we have a place through December. We paid the hotel through December. And right now, we're looking for a 2-bedroom apartment somewhere in the San Gabriel Valley that's dog-friendly. And that's the most important thing right now. And once we kind of figure that out, we'll have a moment to breathe and then figure the rest of it out, in terms of insurance, in terms of everything about building a life all over again, because we're starting from scratch at this point. And I'm surprisingly calm and hopeful. There's something inside of me that says that when all is said and done, when everything is over, that we're going to be okay. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means, but in my heart, I have every confidence and every faith that we're going to be okay. And the first several days are real tense because, as I said, we were in a small room with my wife, my sister-in-law, 2 dogs, and just the stress and the anxiety kind of took its toll, and we really just had a big argument. And then 2 of our friends came, visit us, and both gave us a proper talking to. And we both needed it. Because there was unresolved stuff that existed between the 2 of us, as it does with any couple. And usually, in our day-to-day, the stuff would show up and manifest itself. And, if you're married or a long-term relationship, you know how that goes. But now we were in a situation where we couldn't afford that kind of conflict or misunderstanding or arguments. There was too much at stake. And we both got a proper talking to in terms of what we need to do. And we gained a great sense of clarity from those precious friends. And we both agreed that the priority above all else, above money, above reconstruction, above anything, is us as a couple. And I told her, what matters to me most is even if we end up in a one-bedroom apartment and are renters for the rest of our lives who have to work, I would rather that and feel happy about the journey that I took with her than to be in some big house that has everything we ever dreamed having, and then to think back and go, the 3 years to get here were absolute hell. So thank God I'm with someone who is in agreement with respect to that the inevitable ups and downs and headaches and heartbreak that are going to come will happen. But we're going to really try as hard as we can to remember that bottom line, it's about how we are together. And I'm real grateful for that. It also made me realize one other thing is that we've created a fine life for ourselves because of how many people are coming out of the woodwork to support us, especially complete strangers, people who have listened to the show, who I've never met, who have stepped up and reached out and not only made, contributions or donations, but have just, said they're sorry and how much they care about what's happening to us. And the resources that are being provided by people both who I know and who I don't know. Just like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, I'm getting a taste of what that felt like for him in that movie, that my life somehow did make a difference for people and that it did matter. And I kind of took that for granted. I was so much in my head about my own failings and the things that I hadn't done and was struggling with and, a lot of nasal gazing. But ironically, and I know this is really strange, but I feel more serene and at peace this week than I did 2 weeks ago when I had everything. I think that's a real good thing. I don't think it's PSD. I don't think it's shock. I don't think it's denial, but it allowed me to realize that I have changed over the last 15, 20 years in ways that I didn't completely understand. That somehow I had, as a result of all this self-work and my commitment to becoming a better person, that I had done that, and as a result had changed the world in which I live in and the people whose lives I get to touch, both who I know personally and who only know me as a voice as a result of, the podcast or the writings or the workshops that I'm in. I'm incredibly thankful. People look at me and they're amazed that, that I'm as calm and as peaceful as I seem to be. But at the same time, I'm terrified, but that's tempered by having faith in something bigger than myself that I know will guide me and give me the insight that I need. And most importantly, there are people out there who have survived this and worse. They bear witness for me, and they show me that it is possible to get through something as impossible and as overwhelming as this is. There's a lot of uncertainty in our future right now. There's uncertainty in terms of where we're going to end up living. There's uncertainty in terms of what reconstruction is going to look like, what money is going to look like, whether my wife will be able to retire next year as she had planned to. There are a lot of things that I don't know. And that's just going to have to be okay. I'm just going to have to accept it. What I am going to do is that I'm every morning meet with my wife, check in emotionally to see how we're doing, and then go over the things that need to get done that day and try to get as much of that done as I can. There'll be some days where I'll be able to check off everything on that list, and there will be days where some things don't get done. Either way, it's just going to have to be okay, because this is a new world that I'm in. And man, it is a wild ride. This is going to be in March. I am going to celebrate my 60th birthday. And I sure as hell didn't imagine that I would be facing something like this, that I would be one of the unhoused. Jesus Christ. Yep, living out of a suitcase. But, I've got options. Some of those people on the street don't have options or support. And I do. And just the fact that I'm recording this is because a friend has opened up her recording studio. Thank you, Patria, for me to record this thing, because I don't have a microphone with which to record the podcast. Eventually I'll have that again. I'll have a space in which to do it. But it was really important for me to reach out and to let people know, hey, this is what's going on. And I fully intend to return to producing the show and putting out conversations about this thing that I love. Yeah, I lost my camera equipment. Yeah, I lost my wonderful collection of monographs that I've been collecting for 40 years, 50 years, a long time. Yeah, it's all replaceable. I'll be able to, not the books. Most of the camera equipment I could care less about. Some of it will get replaced, and I'll probably own less than I had back then. But one thing I'm really glad about was that my dad's first camera, a Kodak Reflex 3, was sitting at my desk at work because I had intended to photograph it, never got around to it. So that camera is safe. It doesn't work. It's just a big paperweight. But man, I am so glad, so grateful that camera is safe, because it was the first camera my dad bought. It was the first kind of real camera I ever got my hands on. And I'm so happy I have it. And a friend of mine from Fuji gifted me X100F, his own personal camera, the other day, with a gift bag with a bunch of food treats he got from Trader Joe's. And I was so moved and touched by that. But, people were asking me about camera equipment, and it was like, I don't, even if I had a camera, I just didn't have time to go out and shoot. I was too busy trying to recover from this thing. But, I'm going to, hopefully this weekend, some parts of Altadena have opened up, and I am going to start, documenting the community as I always have before. But now the project is going to be about recovery and rebuilding. And, if you ask me what I'm doing photographically, that's going to be what I'm going to be doing for the next 3 or 5 years. So, I'll talk more of that as things come up. I've talked already for 30 minutes. I thought I was going to talk for a lot less. So suffice it to say, your help and your contributions do make a difference. It doesn't matter how little or how much you contribute. My wife created a GoFundMe page, which is going to be very, very helpful. I also have a BuyMeACoffee where you can contribute any amount. I'm still able to sell eBooks. So if you're inclined to buy an eBook, you can do that. And lastly, we do have Patreon still, where you can be a regular supporter and donate funds every month to help produce the show. And I don't know exactly when the next episode will be. I'm hoping that by the end of February, I will be settled in an apartment somewhere, and I'll have a microphone and I'll have an internet, and I'll be able to release something. If that doesn't work, I'll be back in Patria's booth to blab about something. I appreciate your kindness and support. And this is not just about me. There are a lot of people out there that are suffering. So if you go to the blog page for this post, I am going to put a link for a friend of mine who is putting together a database of photographers throughout Southern California, not just Altadena, who are in need of help. Please, don't think that the government and the feds and all that are going to take care of everything. They're going to be help, but it's going to take a hell of a long time. And no amount is small enough. I'll close with this. I got a message from someone who told me that they were on a, fixed income, and they'd always been listening to the show, but they contributed a small amount to me after hearing about what happened. And I was so incredibly moved by that, because I knew for that person, those few dollars, that was the sacrifice. It was more painful for them to give me that than someone else who may have given us $500 or $1,000. And I am so touched by someone who says that even though I have so little, I need to share something. And that is very humbling. And it's hard to feel that I am deserving of that. But I am very, very, nevertheless, grateful for that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting me for all these years on the show. I'll be gone temporarily, but I certainly will be back, because this show will always be a part of my life, and hopefully yours, and it's not going anywhere. So thanks a lot, and see you next time.